In this video, I'll be explaining the main components of Git and how to get started with it. Git is an essential tool to work with any sort of code. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a current tech professional, I think we could all really benefit from watching this video to be more efficient and understanding of Git's processes and workflows. You will learn some very basic concepts along with a proper workflow of pushing a change, along with extra methods that I was stumped with when I actually started using Git. Now you might be thinking, what actually is Git? First off, Git is a distributed version control system that enables multiple software developers to track change to code and collaborate on a multitude of different projects. This basically means it's a way to work within the same code base so a team can efficiently work together on whatever features or releases need to be finished. And no, Git is not GitHub. Let me explain. GitHub is a repository that houses a code base which uses the Git version control like Azure DevOps or Bitbucket or any other repository that you can think of. For the sake of not getting you confused, I'll be showcasing in Azure DevOps instead of GitHub. Before we get started, I think it would be valuable if you had a cheat sheet to track some of the Git commands that I'll be using in this video. The link is down in the description for this cheat sheet, so you can use that and put that up while I'm going through this video and while you are actually watching it. To actually use Git, we need to configure it or install it. Git comes pre-built on Linux machines such as Mac OS or Red Hat. And if you're on a Linux machine that isn't pre-configured on, you could just use that system's package manager such as yum or sudo apt-get to install that really easily. Now, if you're on a Windows machine, you need to install it using an executable. The link will be down in the description for you, whether you're on a 64 or 32-bit or Windows 8, 7, 10, 11. There's so many nowadays. But whatever Windows OS you're on, there'll be a Git version for you. Now, once this is configured, you'll need to authenticate with the repository that you plan on making changes to. On top of this, we'll need to make some configuration changes on the Git system within your local computer as well. There are 3 levels of configuration. There's system, there's global, and there's local. System is for all the users on the machine you're on. And global is for all the repositories that current user you are logged in as. So for example, if I'm logged in my Anthony profile, the global will only change the Anthony profile within my machine. Right now, we'll only change the config of the global since that's the only user we care about is ourselves. Usually this gets handled by Azure DevOps, but it is important to know these little nuances of Git authentication. So whatever change you're making can be tracked with all of your commits. After setting up our configuration, we need to clone our first repository to actually make our changes. First, we'll go to Azure DevOps and click on repositories. Whichever repo you like to clone, click on it, and then click the clone button on the top right. There are a few ways you can clone your repository. One is through the command line, and the other is cloning directly into your IDE. Personally, I like to use the git clone command rather than the IDE version, because this is how I learned it, and it just makes more sense personally. You will then go to the directory you'd like to clone that repository to on your computer and put in the command git clone with the URL that it provides here. It will clone this repository's main/master branch on the location you specified, and you might have to authenticate with your Microsoft account that you would use to log into that Azure DevOps repository anyways. Now moving forward, let me explain branches. The main or the master branch is where encode will reside. For example, any change you make in your own branch is supposed to be merged into the main or master branch once that branch's goal is finished. For example, you have this pipeline that you're working on and a feature needs to get added to it, whether that be an Azure CLI command or another input for a parameter. I can make a change in my own branch, commit it, and then push that change to my own branch. After I push that branch and then update on the Azure DevOps repository, I can then create a pull request which pulls that change from my branch into the main branch that everyone else will use within the project. Now, I know I spit out a lot of information, and that is the high-level workflow of Git, but let's break down those steps and make it more palpable. To start working on your feature to add to the code base, you need to use the command git checkout -b and whatever branch you're working on. This cannot have any spaces or any special characters in it. This will take the copy of the current branch you are on, preferably the main or master branch, and switch you to the branch that you created and named in this command. As you can see here, we are now in the new branch that I created, and you can see that it basically just copied the main branch and put it onto this name. Once this happens, I'm free to make all these changes on this branch and update this branch as freely as I would to complete the overarching goal of this branch, whatever that may be. Now, once you have tested on your local branch that you've created previously and everything is looking good and working as expected on your local branch, then you can make a pull request to pull in your changes into the main or master branch. This is what we call merging your branch into the main branch. Most Git-enabled repositories, such as Azure DevOps, will give you a notification that it acknowledges you have made a change on a personal branch, and if you would possibly want to create a pull request to merge those changes into the main branch. Once this happens, you can add reviewers and comments, but since this is a lab, we'll go right ahead and complete that change and showcase that our changes made it into prime time, aka the main branch. In a company environment, you would have 1 to 2 people other than yourself merge these changes into the branch by checking and making comments to see if it is all kosher. This is sort of the main workflow of Git, and it is really important to kind of get this workflow down. Let's look into the more nuanced steps from making a change in your local branch and completing a pull request. Now, in order to start the process of making a pull request, we need to make a change on our own branch and stage that file. After making a change to the specified file or adding another file into the actual staging environment, you'll have to do git add in that file name. If you want to add the whole directory that you're in, you can also do git add dot or period, which basically means to add the whole directory recursively from your current spot. As you might know, period stands for the current directory, similar to how dot dot is the previous directory. If you know anything about Unix directory management, this makes complete sense to you. If you do not, I would suggest learning some Unix commands to traverse a directory on a Unix machine. This is how bash shells work. And if you want to make some wildcard changes such as git add star.pdf, this will add all of the files that have a suffix of .pdf or a PDF file. After you do this, the files are now in the staging area, and that is a snapshot that is created since you've added those files in. After those files and those changes are in the staging area, you can now commit those staged files by committing them. This pushes these files into the Git repository as a permanent change to your local branch, not the main branch yet. You can do this by doing git commit, and there are a plethora of different flags that your cheat sheet should show you. But for now, we can do git commit -m, open quotations, and the message of that change. You can kind of just do a summation of it, and it will show up in the pull request that we will showcase later. This will commit all the items in the staging area, where you can then push those changes to the branch for it to be used and views by anyone that is on your branch. This can be done by you doing a git push. Once that change is on your personal branch, then you'll have to create a pull request. In the case of the pipeline that we're working on, if someone else wanted to run the pipeline, then they would have the most up-to-date code in the main branch. Also, this is where people can look at your changes, make comments and suggestions, and also approve your changes. This kind of wraps up the full workflow of a Git change, from creating your own branch, to staging a file, to pushing those changes with a commit, and then ultimately creating a pull request to pull those changes into the main branch. This should give you a base understanding of using Git in your workplace for collaborative team environment. However, there's some other minute details that I think are beneficial in addition to this very basic Git workflow. Now, when I first started using Git, I did have trouble removing staged files that were already within the staging environment. There are some instances where you accidentally add a file that either isn't needed or you realize something is wrong with it in the staged environment. You first need to remove this file from your local repository using the rm command that is partial to the Unix system or that bash shell. However, this will only remove the file from your local repository, not the staging environment. To remove the file from the staging environment, you need to do a git add in that file name again. This will then remove it from the staging environment, and this will be confirmed with a git status command. Now, there could be instances where you need to rename a file similar to removing a file that you already added to the staging environment. In order to rename a file, you need to use the Unix command mv, and this will basically rename the file as you would any other way. However, the git status will show that the previous file and its name is being tracked, but it's no longer present. So what you need to do is you need to git add from the previous name to remove it from that staging environment, similar to how you did previously for removing a file, and then git add the new name so it can track it properly. This will unstage that previous file name, and then we'll stop tracking it, and then it will start tracking the new name file that you did when you did the git add. Now, there may be instances where there's some files in that directory that you're using but won't be used in the final build, so you might want to ignore them from being pushed and committed through Git. This can include either some output from code or, a build was made that you don't want to be pushed. Whatever it may be, you can ignore these files using a gitignore file. What you need to do is add a file called .gitignore with no spaces to the root directory of that Git local repository directory on your machine. Anything within this file will be ignored by Git, so you're free to have these files in that directory. To add a ignore to that gitignore file, all you have to do is just put in a wildcard or a directory name or a file name within that gitignore, similar to how I'm doing now. Once you add that, you can now look in the Git status saying that it will ignore these files and won't fuss about them anymore. As I stated previously, you can look at certain changes within the pull request, but what if you want to look at these changes before you get to the pull request stage? Sometimes as a developer, you may want to confirm what change is being made without actually making a pull request to save you some time. You can do this using git diff --stage, and it will show you the change you made in the staging area comparative to the branch that it's on. I think this is a really great tool to use to help when pushing a change so you understand as a developer what is being changed on that branch rather than getting all the way to the final stage of a pull request and understanding, oh wow, I made this mistake. Now, to wrap this up, I know this was a lot of information, but I hope these little things can at least start you creating a workflow where you can implement these features and be more confident while using Git. The whole purpose of this video is to get you using Git and start integrating it into your daily life cycle and daily workflows so you can understand and be more confident with it throughout your career. There are more things that can be beneficial, but as a bare-bones start, I think this can be very valuable for your first internship, professional job, or even working in parallel with classmates on school projects as I have in the past. When in doubt, always run Git status and it will give you a great description that you can look up to help push you to resolve that situation quickly. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Let me know down in the comments what more tutorials you would like to see, and subscribe for more content to support my channel. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.